Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 362. I'm Mike, and this.
I'm Scott.
So, Scott, this is your first time joining me.
Yep.
Um, I've been doing the channel for years. I've had a handful of guests on my show. I don't know if you were watching way back then, but I had my friend Miguel, my friend Trevor have been on. This guy Matt I met through toy collecting came on the show, and then I found Chad, and Chad kind of became my permanent co-host.
Right.
And I haven't had any guests on for a while, so this is kind of a nice treat.
Yeah, I'm honored. Honored to be here.
Thank you for coming, because Chad is still my main man here, but he's been very busy running his new business and everything, so he doesn't have a whole lot of time. I'm so used to having somebody to bounce things off of now.
Sure.
It feels a little weirder to do like solo episodes, even though I did that for a really long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you could join. But why don't I give you the floor and tell us a little bit about yourself and how this came to be?
Certainly. So I have known Chad for quite a few years. And a few years ago, he posted one of your guys' videos on Facebook.
Yep.
And I wasn't into toy collecting or comics or anything at the time. I was when I was younger. There was certain waves of toys that I liked to collect.
Yeah.
There was a few things I hung on to, but for the most part, I got out of it completely.
So what was your main stuff as a kid?
It would have been Alf, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Street Sharks, Biker Mice. Then there was a bunch of random things that like my mom would just pick up toys at the flea market. I didn't know where they came from, but they looked cool. I would usually try to mingle them in with like my Jurassic Park or my Ghostbusters and stuff.
Are you the same age as Chad?
I think I'm a year or two younger.
Okay.
So I'm 38, turning 39 in August.
Okay, yeah, so no, you're quite a bit younger, because I think he's 42.
I can't remember.
Because I'm 47.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a decade.
Yeah.
Because you can tell by our collecting. Because
Right.
I was more the early 80s.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe, Transformers, Masters of the Universe. So I'm familiar with all those brands.
Yeah.
I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me, and he was into some of that stuff. Like he had a big collection of Beetlejuice, and he had Ninja Turtles were more his thing than mine. But yeah, so all that biker stuff, biker mice and everything, that was a little after my time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
because in my generation, I guess you'd say, a lot of the toys that were hot were because the toy companies would get cartoons made to sell their toys.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like Alf was one thing that I stuck with the whole time. Turtles I kind of stuck with the whole time, but there was a lot of after a year or two you're kind of moved on to the next thing because the toy companies kind of made you forget about what you were collecting before.
Yeah.
They got a new fancy show or something and you moved on.
It's the same of my generation.
Yeah.
Like the cartoons were basically made to sell the toys.
Yeah.
Now I can go back and I can watch G.I. Joe cartoons from my youth, and they're a little silly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the quality of animation and everything, and a lot of the storytelling, knowing that it was geared towards children, it holds up pretty good.
Yeah.
Was like the quality of Biker Mice, and were they good shows?
Biker Mice, I think, held up.
Yeah.
Street Shark, like I'll still go back and watch Biker Mice. Street Sharks, the first season held up pretty well.
Yeah.
Then it quickly kind of started falling off. They were always trying to introduce new characters too quickly.
Yeah.
And just to get with the new toys. Alf has held up. I find like I'll still go back and watch Alf on a regular basis.
Both the live action and the cartoon?
The cartoon, not so much. The cartoon didn't hold up as well. It was definitely more geared towards the kids. The live show had a lot more adult type comedy and stuff in it that still holds up to today.
Now, I think I mentioned this because I know you're a big Alf guy. I think I told this before, but when I was a kid, I had a bit of a crush on Rhonda, his girlfriend from the cartoon. So she was an Alf like him.
Yeah.
But I think and maybe I'm remembering her wrong, but I remember she was kind of punk rocky because she had like a big, I don't know if I'd call it a mohawk or like a pompadour, but like
and like the earrings and everything.
So she seemed cool, but I wouldn't say I forgot about Alf, but it's interesting to meet a guy that's like that's his main thing. Because I didn't think there'd be enough Alf for it to be anybody's main thing. But
Well, that was one of the reasons why I got back into collecting. So I saw your guys' video.
Yep.
And then I kept watching. I like the nostalgia vibes, even though like I didn't have a lot of the stuff that you guys collect. I still remember it all. I remember the cartoons and the commercials and things like that. So I reached out to Chad and I just asked like, where do you guys even get these toys? And he asked me like what I was into, and I said, oh, like Alf was the only thing I still really had from my childhood. And he said, oh, Big Bad Toy Store actually has a new Alf toy up on the site right now. And he sent me the link.
Yeah,
and it was game over after that.
The timing was pretty good for you to get into toy collecting, because I don't think there's been any Alf toys for like the last 25, 30 years.
No.
And now there's a plethora of them.
Yeah, starting to come back again. And the reason why I was like, okay, there's only a few things, so it's not going to break the bank if I go and get like a couple toys here and there. There's not a lot. And then I discovered Facebook Marketplace, and that there was a bunch of Alf stuff on there. So I think over like a month, I'm pretty sure I'm the only guy that went out and just collected everything that was on there from Alf from like here to New Brunswick.
Like you got a cake pan or something?
I got a cake pan. There's a few things that are in PEI in New Brunswick that I plan on going out to now that the weather's getting nicer. Get my eyes on those. But the collector cards. So Alf's the only thing that I collect from like the older stuff. Everything else that I get now, I like the newer things. So like the new Street Sharks, the new Biker Mice, the newer Turtles and things like that.
I'm kind of the same way. Like I love my vintage toys, but they kind of had their time.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we both went to a toy show this past weekend. And I think it's awesome that we have toy shows in our area now, because I've been a toy collector forever and we've never had things like that. I was always envious when I'd hear about places in the States that had these big toy shows. So it's great that we have them, but it's not a whole lot of new stuff. I find it's mostly people selling their vintage stuff. And I'm just not really looking to buy old He-Mans or old G.I. Joes at this point. So
and a lot of them, their accessories are missing, or like they might be, the limbs are so weak that you can't really pose them.
Yeah, the paint's rubbed off. Yeah. There is a little bit of an ick factor just because, some kid played with this thing. It was in their bathtub and everybody sneezed on it. So yeah, it's one thing if it's my vintage toys, but used vintage toys, I'm a little... So yeah, I buy them and they're not going to get displayed. So it's like, I'm buying this thing, it's immediately going home in a bucket. It kind of defeats the purpose. So yeah, that's why I like newer stuff as well, because it's nice, it's fresh, it's ready to display.
Yeah. And a lot of them they're bigger, they're more colorful, more articulation than the ones we grew up with.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so you started buying Alf stuff.
Yeah.
And I follow you on Instagram, which if you want more followers, it's what?
Scott's Toy Room.
Scott's Toy Room.
Yeah.
And I see you spiraling out of control on there. So it's no longer just Alf.
No. So it was Alf, and then the new wave of Street Sharks came out because of their 30th anniversary. And I thought, okay, again, there's only like 6 of them. Not a big deal. Take up one shelf.
Yep.
Got that. Then Biker Mice, same idea. It was the 30th anniversary. I loved Biker Mice. So okay, again, there's only a few of them.
Yep.
Got those. I've always loved Turtles.
Yep.
But there is so much Turtle stuff. So I was nervous about getting into it. Then Chad talked me into The Last Ronin.
Right.
He said, okay, there's only like a few of these figures. It's a different series, because I haven't been reading comics or anything like that over the years either.
Yep.
So he said, you can pick this up. It's a darker timeline. It's really good. So I got that, loved it. So then I started picking up some of those figures, loved those. Then
but that's expanded a lot too, right? Like,
yes,
because Last Ronin, it was supposed to be a self-contained story, but now they've done like a sequel and a prequel, and
they're on their 3rd series of 5 comics in each series.
Yeah, and I see this.
Not going to end.
I see the toys all the time, not only on your Instagram, but like GameStop is constantly getting new Last Ronin toys.
Yeah, they are.
That it seems to be becoming kind of a whole universe unto itself.
Yeah, I can definitely see it continuing on. They have some new characters that I'd love to get some figures of. And then reading The Last Ronin, there was some references to other, like the regular Turtles series that have a lot's changed since I last got into it.
So Last Ronin was your introduction back to comic books.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
And Turtles. Yeah. Yep. So then I thought, well, I kind of want to understand what they're referencing a little bit more. So And then I think it was either you or Chad that told me there was a new Ninja Turtles Jump Off series starting.
Yeah, new one just started like what,
Yeah.
6 months ago maybe.
Yeah, I think they're on, it's either issue 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'll pick those up. But then in those they reference other comics, so now I'm starting to get into like TMNT Mutant Nation and Night Watcher, which is opening me up to new characters or just different looks and versions of like the Turtles. And so now my toy collecting for Turtles has expanded. So that is where we're at now, and
Yeah,
it's
like
a slippery slope.
it really is like ironic. Like the timing of your starting collecting really worked out well for you, because like if
Yeah.
you were into the stuff I'm into and you just discovered our channel and just got into it now,
Yeah.
you'd be thinking like, oh, I missed out on so many good GI Joes, and so
Yeah.
many good Transformers are now really expensive on eBay, and I missed out on all the good He-Man guys because now we're several waves in. But like Biker Mice, Street Sharks, the Last Ronin, all these things are basically new.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy the luck you had
was-
of these stuff, the stuff you like starting out right when you're getting into it.
Yeah, I feel lucky. My wife not so much, but yeah, it was perfect timing. It was that midlife crisis, I guess, timing of. I
Right.
mean, I could have go and buy a sports car, but I'd rather have some couple toys I can fit in my house on a shelf.
I do apologize to your wife. Like me and Chad talk all the time when we look at
Yeah.
all your things you're posting, and we're like,
Yeah.
it makes me feel good. Because yeah, I would say you're at least the most vocal fan of our channel. I appreciate you always comment on every video and everything, because I'm always encouraging people to comment because it helps the engagement of the channel and stuff.
Yeah.
But I still get the occasional comment from people being like, you guys talk too much, or this is too long, or whatever. And I kind of stood my ground that like I don't want. If I wanted to be on TikTok, I'd be on TikTok. If I wanted to do 30-second reviews and just get views, then that's what I would do. But like, I set out to do like a weekly show where I sit down for like an hour and talk about toys. It's not just about a review of an action figure, because there's already millions of those online. So it's nice to find an audience that sits down and appreciates it, even if we're talking about stuff that you're not necessarily into, but you just enjoy watching it. So that's great. So when I see that you've become a toy collector, me and Chad feel like it's a little bit of a victory.
Yeah.
But if you end up divorced, then I will feel very bad about it. So.
At least I don't have to worry about her trying to take half of my toys, though. That they're all mine.
Yeah.
Or she might take them to burn them. I don't know. But
yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because the other thing that really drew me into the channel was you do talk about like the history of the toy, and like when you had them as a kid and comparisons. And like I mentioned, my mom would pick up action figures from like the yard sales or whatnot. She'd pick a $2 bag of random things, and I didn't know what they belonged to. And now I'm seeing a lot of like, especially like the He-Man stuff and like the Masters of the Universe are all things that I did have as a kid, but I didn't know what they were, or what they belonged to.
Right.
So now seeing you explain some of these characters, and it's fun seeing like, did I use that guy right? Was he a good guy? Was he a bad guy?
Yeah.
And so that's been really like it's a whole other nostalgia feeling seeing. So like, not only am I getting to like relive that memory, but now I'm getting to learn about it. So
yeah, I had the same experience. Like, because I've basically been a toy collector forever. I never really stopped from my childhood, but it was around like 2002, like right around the turn of the century, that when the internet really became a viable thing, that I started learning more about like some of the deep dives into some of the things I liked as a kid. And I had kind of like you, I had my GI Joes in a box and my Transformers in a box, but then I also had what me and my brother just called our figure drawer. It was our miscellaneous drawer that had like one Voltron figure, one Dungeons and Dragons figure, and a lot of times we didn't know what we had. It was just a random monster and a random thing. And it was like when I started doing my toy blog back in 2012, I would say, I'm going to review this little green monster guy with 4 arms. And I would do Google action figure, green 4 arms. And it took me a while sometimes to do some deep dives, and I find out like, oh, this thing was actually from a movie, or it was based on a thing, and it's fun learning the history
Yeah.
of some of those things you had as a kid that you didn't know the history of.
Yeah, we only had the back of the box, if that.
Yeah.
So
Like even oh yeah, I was gonna say, do you know Battle Beasts? But yeah, you
Yep.
do, because we've talked about Battle Beasts.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite toy lines as a kid. And when you bought them, they came in 2-packs. So you got, a little rhinoceros with a little bat. And every package I got, there was no information. There was no bios. There was no names. So I didn't know these characters were supposed to have names. And because there was 2 characters in each package, I always said, one guy's a good guy, one guy's a bad guy. And I set my own armies with no, unlike the cartoons of G.I. Joe and Transformers, nothing to kind of guide my storyline. I kind of made it all up myself. I gave them their own names. Mm-hmm. And it was only years later with the internet that I realized, oh, these characters did have names. People only knew the names if you ordered away for the special poster, and then the poster came with all the character names. And it's just interesting to learn history of things that you had no idea even existed.
Yeah, you spent all this time playing with these things when you were younger, and you didn't even know what they were, or were you using them correctly?
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's toys. It's fun.
It is. Yeah.
All right. So I mentioned the toy show. Yes. So we'll get into that in a quick second. I have a couple of miscellaneous toys that I want to talk about here. I went to an antique shop in Halifax. This is probably about a month ago now, a month and a half, I don't know. Because a friend of mine, Brian, messaged me, and he was like, I'm in this weird little antique store. Have you ever been in here? And he sent me some pictures of what they had. And there was a bunch of Universal Monster figures and like some knockoff Godzilla figures. And it's kind of stuff I would totally be into. And I was like, no, where is this place? I need to go check it out. So I went there like a couple of days later, and it was really cool stuff. I was surprised it wasn't as vintage as I thought it was, because you look at these Universal Monster figures and I thought these things must be from the 70s. It turns out they were from the 90s. Okay. But anyway, they were a little overpriced because, as we just talked about, I don't really seek out old vintage toys very much, even though I love the Universal Monsters. And these things didn't necessarily look great. Like the likenesses weren't quite right. The paint was rubbed off a little bit. So I only bought the one. So I bought this rubber Wolfman because he's my favorite of the Universal Monsters.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's in good shape. I don't imagine he would have been much better looking when he was brand new out of the package, but he's kind of fun. He's like full of beans.
I was going to say, he's got like a beanbag feeling.
Yeah, he's not going to be easy to display because he'll just fall over.
Yeah.
But he's fun. I'm surprised something like this can survive even 20 years without having like beans falling out of him.
Deteriorate or...
Yeah. So there was another Wolfman they had that was about like, I don't know, 9 inches tall or something. And I was tempted to get that one too, but he was part of a set for $60. You got Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman. And I just didn't really want to drop the $60. But
I wonder if one of those like the Superman stands or the stands for like the heroes that fly.
Those things that clip around the waist. Yeah. I'm just worried like that would maybe rub against him and tear him. Like, I don't know if he probably won't go on display. He'll probably go in one of my spare parts bins. Yeah. But anyway, he's kind of fun. He was only a couple of bucks, I think.
Yeah.
And the other guy I got. So did you have any vintage G.I. Joes growing up, like 80s Joes?
I did. So like I had a couple cousins that are a little bit older than me. They had a ton of those, and then when they started growing out of it, I got a lot of their hand-me-downs. So I did have a lot of the G.I. Joes. The only one I really remember is Snake Eyes. He was the only one I was familiar with and knew his name. And then everybody else, it was, well, like I knew like the Cobras go on one side,
Yeah.
So I knew that much of it, but as to like the characters and their backgrounds and who they were, that part I didn't know too much about.
Right. So like I was with G.I. Joe from the get-go when it came out in 82, but I jumped ship at like 1990, and it went on for another 4 years after that. So the tail end, I wasn't really into. They were often the brighter colored figures and stuff. And if anything, I thought maybe you would have had some of those. But so this guy here, this was, I think, one of the cooler figures from 1985. This here is the Snow Serpent. He's like, so this is mine from childhood. He's a, Cobra snow trooper. He comes with snowshoes and all this other stuff. Now there was a version 2 of him that came out, I think, in 91. So he was after my time. Anyway, I found the 91 version at the thrift store there.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, he was kind of cool because I love the Snow Serpent, and it's not a bad figure. I think the colors are a little stupid, but he's cool.
Yeah.
And I have that same, they repainted that mold. This guy's broken in half, but
Okay.
this is from 98. But I think it looks a lot better, a lot more believable in those colors.
Yeah, I don't think bright yellow and purple are going to camouflage too well in the snow.
And that's the problem. A lot of people remember the 90s Joes. And I don't know, I'm speaking generally. Maybe guys younger than me love them. But I think most of the guys that are in the collector community are guys more my age that remember G.I. Joe from the early 80s.
Yeah.
And they're not very nostalgic for these 90s figures. They get kind of a bad rap. But I think the sculpting is actually pretty good on a lot of these figures. It's just they painted them in like garish colors and gave them like pink weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
And so when you repaint these figures into like more realistic colors like this, then you realize they were actually pretty solid.
Yeah, like I like the gun holster that they have on there, and they got the knife with the sheath.
Yeah, so this was a good find, and again, he was only a couple of bucks. I do keep a list on my phone of the vintage G.I. Joes that I'm missing in my collection, and yeah, if I find them for the right price, then I absolutely pick them up. But yeah, this guy is just going to go directly into a bin. So that's kind of a bummer, I guess. But anyway, so that was the antique store.
Okay.
But now we'll talk about the toy show. So this was just from this past weekend. You and I think the first time we saw each other in real life was at one of these toy shows.
Yeah.
Yep. And I probably should have checked in with you before I went to this one, but yeah, we missed each other apparently.
Yeah. I think we might have been there around the same time, but I think I would have been pretty much on my way out as you were showing up. Because I know you don't always go to them.
I think I've only missed one.
Oh, okay.
The thing is, I've gone to... They started doing these things about a year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And I've been to a bunch. But the thing is, it is a lot of the same vendors.
Yeah.
I was finding they were bringing a lot of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it is old toys and old comic books. And I feel like I have to buy something since I'm there. But I spend more than I need to on my budget on this other stuff.
Yeah.
So to go and kind of throw away money on old stuff that I wasn't really after, it's a bitter pill to swallow, I guess. But so I wasn't planning on going to this one, but my older brother, he's really into buying vintage comic books and stuff, so he wanted to go. And he asked me if I wanted to tag along. And I said, well, sure, I'll tag along. So I went and grabbed $100 cash, because most of it's cash there.
Yeah.
And I blew through $100 there. I didn't get a whole lot to show for it, but so you bought some stuff there as well?
I got some stuff there too, yeah. And like you said, like it's usually like the last few times I went, I haven't bought anything. I'll pay my $3 to get in, and it's just kind of nice for $3 to go around and see or handle some of the toys that like it's almost like a little museum tour. Yeah. So that's usually worth it for me. I did get a few things this time. I didn't bring them with me, but there was an Alf book. So usually I go to this trying to find Alf stuff. I said the Alf stuff's the older things that I'll get. I like newer stuff for the newer things from the other things I collect. But I did find an old storybook. I have it 2 or 3 times over already, but I find it hard to leave them behind.
Yeah.
So I grabbed that. There was an old Biker Mice throttle action figure that I did get. I didn't plan on getting any of the classic ones, but then I thought I might get just the 3 main characters to put on my shelf next to the newer toys, so you can see the difference. Like there's a huge size difference in these ones.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting 4 turtles. They were still packaged, the 2013 remakes of the 1988 originals. Yeah. And they just wanted like $10 each for them, so I couldn't turn that away because I do see them at some of our stores, and they want like 20 plus tax is usually a good price. Yeah. For them, so to see them for $10, I couldn't say no to those.
Yeah, and I don't think you've picked these up yet. And I don't necessarily want to again because you're buying a lot of modern turtles. You've got the vintage turtles. I don't know why they're carrying these all of a sudden, but GameStops all of a sudden have like the 2012 turtles again. Have you seen those?
I don't think so.
Because they're affordable. I think they're like under $20.
Okay.
But those were I loved those turtles. I think those were some of my favorite turtle designs. They were Playmates figures.
Okay.
That's when they had like kind of bandages around their hands and feet and stuff.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
And they were great toys. The cartoon that supported it was fully CG. I never watched the CG cartoon, and I don't think the toys quite matched the look of the cartoon, but I think the toys are better looking than the cartoon.
I agree.
Anyways, so those are some of my favorite turtle toys, even though they were some of the just basic retail. I paid a lot more for more expensive turtles, but I was kind of surprised to see that they've been re-released, because usually, Playmates will go back and revisit the vintage 80s stuff a lot, but the later generation stuff kind of gets ignored, so I would recommend you seek them out.
I actually did. I didn't get the new ones. Okay. I did get them secondhand from Giant Robot.
Okay.
And because they had the 4 there, and that was my first time seeing them, because I also did not watch the newer cartoon.
Yeah.
But I just loved the look of them, and like they looked very. The first thing that I noticed was how easily it looked for them to stand on my shelf and not fall over. Yeah, because that is a problem.
They've got nice wide base feet.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, these guys will be easy to fit on the shelf. They're not going to tip over, and they had all the weapons. So I was like, okay. Good. I was like, and I can't remember how much they won for them there, but I couldn't. They were there for, I think it was 2 weekends in a row. I saw them. I thought, you know what? I'm taking them home this time if they're still there, and they were there. So I do have them, and I do love them.
Yeah, good. Yeah, Chad makes fun of me sometimes because I talk about toys' feet. And it's not like I'm into feet or anything. It's just when you have a room like this full of toys, there's nothing worse than finding them face down on the floor.
Yeah, it's like dominoes. If one goes, the rest are going to go.
And there's certain brands that you need to buy display bases for. And when you have as many toys as I do, that can get very expensive very quickly. So when you get a new toy who's got a nice, solid, wide foot and he stands up, it's such a nice relief, So those turtles were really good for that.
Yeah.
All right. Was there anything at the toy show that you were like, ooh, you wanted to get, but you didn't pull the trigger on?
They did have the 2013 Shredder I got the 4 turtles. Mm-hmm. They did have the Shredder there. They didn't have Splinter.
Okay.
So I thought, well, if I get that Shredder, now I have to go back and get the Shredder for the other, because it's mostly been just the 4 turtles I've been collecting from the Ninja Turtle line.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I get this Shredder, I got to go back and get the other Shredders and try to find those. And then also it's incomplete because the only one missing is Splinter. So I had a hard time walking away from that. But other than that, it does look like there's some new vendors this time.
Yeah.
It was busier. There was some different things. So I did like seeing that. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, there's always... it seems to be growing. Like this time, this was the first time that they had like a concession stand too.
Yeah.
I think that was, I don't know if it was connected to it, but they were doing it for charity.
Charity thing, yeah.
But they were selling hot dogs and muffins and pops and everything, which is good.
Yeah.
Because I find it gets very warm in that little place.
It does. Oh, there was actually 2 other things. Yeah. There was a guy that had Street Sharks. I don't know if you saw them or you're going through, but he had a bunch of the old Street Sharks. Like I said, I'm not trying to get into the old ones, and they're not too different from the remakes. So it wasn't like the Biker Mice where it's a really big difference. So I'd like to show that off.
Yeah.
So, but the nostalgia was there, so I was tempted, but I didn't get those. And then there was...
What's the price on those?
I think he was asking like $30 or $40 each as well, which isn't too far off from the new remake prices.
Yeah.
So I left those there, and then I've recently gotten to the Toxic Avenger.
Okay.
And there was a remake of the Migos Toxie figure that was on one of the tables, and I was tempted to get that, but again, he looked like he'd be hard to display, and like he didn't look like... There's a couple. The Super 7 has some new ones out that I've got my eye on, and I would rather have those. So I'm not going to have a Toxie shelf. So I left them behind, and then I thought about them for a couple times that day, but I think I made the right choice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that I was really kicking myself over leaving behind, but there were lots of little things I could have picked up. Like, I don't buy a lot of Jurassic Park toys, but they had kind of the mid-sized T-Rex. He was probably about this, and he was $20. And I have the vintage, like the first ever Jurassic Park T-Rex, which was one of the toys my little brother collected. Right. But he handed it down to me when he outgrew his toys, and I just never did. But I also have the big, like really big mega one from a couple years ago that was scaled for a 6-inch figure. So I've already got a giant T-Rex and the original good-sized T-Rex, and they had another one that was about the same size as the original. And I'm like, what do I need a third T-Rex for?
Yeah.
But it's just like $20. That's a pretty good price for a T-Rex.
It is actually, yeah.
And if I had any money left at the end of the day, I was going to go back and get him. But I blew through my $100. So I only have one toy to show you, though. So there is a guy there that sells Blu-rays. And I frequently buy Blu-rays from him because I don't know where he gets them. I assume they fell off of a truck somewhere.
Must have.
Because he usually sells them for like $15.
Yeah.
Maybe 20. And I still buy, or I try to buy, at least my favorite movies on Blu-ray. I have a pretty big collection. So when a new movie comes out, now that these toy shows are so frequent, I sometimes think, oh, you know what? I shouldn't buy it at Walmart. I'll wait a month and see if the guy at the toy show has it. So I picked up, speaking of Wolfman here, so I bought the new 2025 Wolfman movie.
Okay.
And I bought Gladiator 2. So they were $20 each. So that ate up $40 of my thing pretty quickly. And then I bought a bunch of comic books, and I got them like really decent prices. Like they were like, a lot of them were $2 each. Like some guy had them listed as 2 for $5. And I really couldn't believe some of the stuff that's in his like 2 for $5 bin. And then I was humming and hawing because I was running low on my budget at this point. And he said, if you buy more than 10, they're $2 each. I'm like, all right, $2. So anyway, I grabbed a handful of comic books. But the one toy I bought, so I don't buy a whole lot of Star Wars anymore.
Yeah.
I've complained on this channel a bunch of times about Star Wars Black Series. I feel they're kind of missing the mark. They just keep making boring figures over and over again. And you're not a big Star Wars guy at all, right?
I wasn't, so
you're getting there.
I've watched the movies a couple times now. I do have, well, I say I have 2 figures. I technically have 3 figures, but one of them is Bill Burr from The Mandalorian, and I got him because he's Bill Burr. I hasn't seen that show, so.
Did you watch his new special on Disney Plus yet?
Not yet. I'm waiting for the wife to come home from Ontario.
I watched it. I watched it last weekend. It was good.
Yeah. I really like Bill Burr.
Anyway, so I was going to ask you if you know this character, but I forgot for a second that you were not a big Star Wars guy. We just convinced you a couple of months ago to get into the movies, right?
Yeah.
So you probably won't know this guy. You know Darth Maul, though, I assume? Yeah. All right. So you're familiar with this dude?
I am not.
All right. So I barely am either, but this guy is from the Clone Wars cartoons that followed the prequel movies. And this guy is Darth Maul's brother.
Okay.
And he has got a totally badass name. I'm a writer. I write some stuff too, and sometimes it feels like when you're trying to write superheroes and things like that, like all the powers have been done. Like there's nothing original left. Yeah. And then every now and again, a comic creator or somebody will come up with a name for a character, and I'm like, holy shit! How did nobody ever come up with that before? So, for example, there's a Green Lantern villain named Atrocitus. And I was like, that's a badass sounding name. How did nobody come up with that? And then the same writer came up with another character called Abysmus shortly afterwards. And I'm like, that's also awesome. Anyway, this guy's name is Savage Opress. Now, I think it's actually pronounced Savage. He's fancy. But it's spelled Savage Opress. Anyway, I don't know much about this guy at all because I didn't really watch the Clone Wars cartoon. But one day, years ago, I was in a Winners, which is like a discount department store here in Canada, and I saw this guy on the pegs, and I was like, who is this dude? He's like a buffer, shirtless Darth Maul, and I love Darth Maul.
Yeah.
So I got this guy, and I read up on him a little bit, found out he was Darth Maul's brother, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, love this figure. I've had it for a long time. Anyway, I was at the toy show, and they had the Star Wars Black Series of Savage Opress. And I saw him, and this guy had a table, and they were all new in box, so he wasn't used or anything. So, and I saw that guy there, and I was like, I don't even know if I knew he was coming out as a figure. And I'm like, and he was $35 because he's a deluxe figure, which means he comes in a wide, like a double wide box, which I think is bullshit because when you look at what he has, he's got 2 weapons, and he's not particularly big or anything. It's bullshit that they would call him deluxe, but he was. So I saw him there for $35, and this guy was selling a bunch of the regular Star Wars figures for like $25. And I was like, this guy's cool, but I don't really collect Star Wars anymore, and I kind of want that T-Rex. And then I was trying to Google, like, I figured, like, could I find this guy cheaper on Amazon or on GameStop?
Yeah.
But we're in like a fire hall or something, and I couldn't get any.
There's no reception.
Can't get any internet. So I'm literally standing there holding the box of this thing, trying to like, go on the internet, and I don't want the vendor to see what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't get on there, and I was like, well, what the hell? I'll do it. So I bought him, and I found it like he's brand new.
Yeah.
Like all the reviews of this guy online are literally like 2 weeks old, so he's hot off the presses.
Okay.
And this guy would retail here in Canada for like $60. He's like a $59.99 figure.
Yeah.
So to get him for $35, it was a pretty good deal. And once I opened him up, I was actually really impressed with him. Like, I still don't think he should be deluxe necessarily, but even things like on his armor, he's got that kind of cool paint wash. So it's just got like a hint of like kind of rustiness to it.
Even like his fingernails, like there's a lot of detail. Like,
he's got a
face sculpt.
Soft goods here. His articulation is good. Like he's articulated at the hip and the mid torso. Like I find they've been cheaping out on a lot of Star Wars figures, and I don't feel I'm getting any bang for my buck. Yeah. I certainly hope this isn't a trend to start making every normal Star Wars figure $60. But with this guy, compared to the other Star Wars figures I've been getting in recent years, I do see where the money went on this guy a little bit. Like he's all new pieces, I think. He's got a really nice paint job. And yeah, he's really cool. So I was really questioning whether I should be buying him at the time, but once I got home with him, I kind of realized what a good deal I had gotten, and that he's hard to find because he's sold out on Amazon. He's not available on GameStop, so I couldn't have found him easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, that turned out to be a really good score. So yeah, that was my my toy show find.
Nice.
All right, now I do have some more miscellaneous stuff. Maybe I'll power through a couple things, then I'll give you the floor again because you brought some.
I didn't want to come empty-handed. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so a couple of quick things. You might have seen me talk about this guy in past videos. Yeah. This is a big, stupid Godzilla figure. Doesn't really look like Godzilla, but it's based on an old 70s toy.
Yes.
So this is a recreation of the 70s toy, which was about yay big. This is a smaller scale one. Super 7 makes it as a reproduction. They make them in this size, and then they also make them in the 3 3/4 inch. I have a whole bunch of the 3 3/4 inch ones. I bought this one. I said, I only need one of the 6-inch ones because these things, like in Canada, you're going to find them, they're about $75.
Okay.
So it's the price of all of Super 7's Ultimate figures, except most of their Ultimate figures are called Ultimates because they have a ton of articulation and a ton of accessories. This guy comes with nothing, and he hardly has any articulation. Okay. So it really, like, what am I paying for here?
Yeah.
However, I've been finding them on Amazon at $20 off or so. Like I'm finding them $55 on Amazon Canadian, that's what they retail for in the States. So I feel a little more justified. Plus, there's no shipping when I order from Amazon. Yeah. So I bought the flaming version a little while ago. I don't know if you saw me review that one.
Yeah.
He's got some flames on him and he's black. Anyway, I bought a third one. So now I bought this one. He's black. He's red and silver.
Yeah.
He doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I've fallen in love with this design.
It's got a lot of weight to them.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you pull that and his little flame breath comes out.
Oh,
if you push the button on his hand, which I don't recommend, his fist flies off with a decent amount of force.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it doesn't make sense why Godzilla's fist flies off, but that's just that's what the vintage toy did, so that's what this one does.
They are quite charming, the look of them.
They are charming. That's the thing. They look cute and silly and kind of ugly, and I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint what it is about them.
Like one of those small ugly dogs. There's something about them.
There is.
You're not going to win a beauty pageant, but
yeah, it also doesn't help that I find when somebody throws some fuel on your fire, like with you, for example, we're probably enabling you a little. Like I don't know if you would have dove in as much as you had if we weren't continuing to feed you. Like I have a friend, Christian, who's really into Godzilla from Super 7 too. Okay. And so me and him now, when it comes to the little ones, they come in a lot of blind boxes. We've been pooling our money and splitting blind boxes together. And the fact that he's pretty rabid about collecting all of them, it kind of makes me feel like I need them more than I would have felt. Yeah, and when he really collects this size and all the different colors, And again, it has kind of fueled my desire to get them as well.
I
So,
believe it.
so he's fun.
Yeah.
But don't need to waste too much time on him.
Now, I was never into Godzilla. I think I've
Yeah.
only seen like 1 or 2 of the movies growing up.
Right.
But because of your videos,
Yeah.
when I do see them out and about, I'm tempted to get one because now it's almost like, oh, that's one of the toys from my favorite YouTube channel. So it's almost like when I would have, oh, there's my toy from my favorite show.
Yeah.
That's what this is almost becoming. So now, because there was a couple at the toy show on the weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I get that? Like, I don't know. But
well, that's
another slippery slope that I'm trying to avoid. But
it is, but you should have at least one Godzilla. Like I've got,
right? Yeah.
How many Godzillas do I have? There's a lot of
There's a
Godzillas.
plethora.
Yeah. Like my collection over here has
Yeah.
quickly outgrown its shelf. They're all over my desk and stuff. It's a bit of a disaster, but yeah, everybody should have at least one Godzilla. So
it's gonna happen. I know it is.
yeah. All right. Now I've got a couple of DC figures.
Mhm.
Now, for a long time, Chad was our resident DC collector. He would bring over all these McFarlane multiverse figures.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, I'm like, I don't really buy a whole lot of multiverse, but we've kind of flipped on that a little bit. He's not really buying them anymore, and I've kind of ramped up my collecting of them. So you might have seen a video I did not too long ago with this Superman. This is the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah.
And I love those movies. They came out at just the right time for me. Like it came out in 78. I was born in 78. So yeah, when I was like 3-4 years old, this was like on TV, and I was so I grew up with this being my Superman. They did not have any merchandise of this back in the day. They have made a couple of Christopher Reeve Supermans over the years, but they're more like high-end collectibles and stuff.
Yeah.
To just get a basic retail figure of Superman like this, I was thrilled, and I talked about on my show how this is basically the perfect Superman.
Yeah, he looks great.
Yeah, he looks great. And now, like a week later, I'm going out and I'm buying another Superman. And you might wonder why you just got the perfect Superman.
Yeah.
But this, I would say, is the perfect, at least almost the perfect comic book Superman, which makes a difference to me. As much as I love Christopher Reeve and he was fantastic in the role, I always prefer comic to real life figures. Like if I could get a Marvel character, I'd rather the comic than the movie any day of the week. And McFarlane has put out a ton of Superman figures based on the comic books, but they always screw it up. Like his head looks off, or he's too muscular, or he's too skinny. I think they finally kind of nailed it with this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, his face sculpt looks great. There's no, like, I remember there was one figure that Chad really hated his smile.
Yeah, a big goofy smile.
Yeah, none of that here. The hair curl looks awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of the early Supermans too had like plastic capes, but now McFarlane's been really good about giving you these soft wired capes. You can pose it, and so it can make it flow how you want. But they've had Supermans where the colors were dark, like a really dark blue, but this is like that perfect comic book blue. I love it. Like when I was like a kid and I started collecting comic books at 8 years old, and I was mostly not a Marvel kid. Yeah. There was kind of what they consider the house style.
Yeah.
Like anytime they hired a new artist, they would give them the guide and say, draw them like this, essentially. And that was, so like every time you went and bought Spider-Man pillowcases or Spider-Man beach towels, they all looked like the same Spider-Man because they were done in that house style, the same way Disney. Like you don't know which different artist draws Mickey Mouse from one product to the next because they have to draw it a certain way. I got into comic books right around the time Marvel kind of let artists do their own thing, I feel. Like people did have their own styles in the 70s and stuff, but it was nothing like the 90s when like Todd McFarlane and these guys, Rob Liefeld, these guys came out and they had these big exaggerated styles. And I loved that as a kid because it kind of felt like a little bit of the house style was old fashioned, and now I wanted these big dynamic styles. Sure. But the older I got, the more and more I appreciated the house style, just the classic, perfect rendition. So even though I have Superman figures based on Jim Lee's artwork or Ed McGuinness's exaggerated super muscly artwork, this figure here is based on like the classic DC house style of the 70s and 80s. And yeah, I think it's pretty much perfect. Yeah. My only beef with it really is I think his neck is maybe a little too wide or maybe a little short or something. I feel his head just sits a little low or something about it. Seems just...
Now, see, I was thinking the opposite because I kind of liked how thick his neck looked. Because when I think of like Superman, I think of somebody that's jacked and like able to lift the car and everything like that. And I find, like years of being in the gym, usually somebody's neck is a quick tell of how strong they are. So I kind of like that look on. He looks more super, I guess, to me.
But see, one thing I would say about the kind of classic Superman is he wasn't necessarily a beefcake,
right?
Because he doesn't need to be. It's not really his muscles that give him the strength. So I find some guys do draw him very big and muscly, but he doesn't necessarily need to be. And yet, I think this guy does look maybe a hint beefier. Like the Christopher Reeve guy doesn't look particularly muscular.
No.
And so, I feel like that physique, just if this guy shared that physique just a smidge more, just like 5%, just crank that neck down a little bit, then it might have been perfect. But I think it's pretty near perfect.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Now, another figure I wanted, so I pre-ordered that a while ago. I was excited it came in. You know the character Dr. Fate?
No.
All right, so he's a DC character. He's kind of like Doctor Strange for DC. And he looks like this.
Okay. I've seen him.
Blue, yellow. When I have the Superpowers figure of this guy from when I was a kid. And this figure was available for pre-order. So I pre-ordered it. I was so excited to get such a classic looking Dr. Fate in the big 7-inch style from McFarlane Toys. Anyway, when it arrived, so GameStop called me. They said, come get your Dr. Fate figure. The GameStop is right beside my wife's work. So I asked her, could you pick that up when you're at work? She came home with it, and she gave me this. And I was like, that's not right.
Yeah.
So this is the Chase variant figure.
Okay.
So McFarlane does that a lot. You don't know you're getting it. And maybe I'm lucky because I got the rare one. But I wanted the baby blue and yellow. And this guy is very dark blue, almost black, and gold. It looks more like a live action version of him, which it just doesn't appeal to me. So I called GameStop, and they said the only other one they had was also the Chase figure. And then I called another location, and I said, did you get your Dr. Fate figures in today? He's like, yeah, we've got a few of them. And I said, can you grab me one? And he grabbed me one. I said, now here's the thing. I got the Chase figure from the other location. And he's like, oh, I was just about to tell you. He's like, all the figures we got are the Chase figure.
Oh.
So I'm like, what is going on here? Every location got the rare one.
Yeah.
So I feel like McFarlane duped me on this one. I haven't opened him, obviously, because I'm hoping to maybe return him to GameStop if they get the standard one in. Anyway.
Because that happened with one of your Superman, too.
Well, yeah, actually, with that Christopher Reeve Superman, there was a whole story I told on that episode where I didn't even know there was a Chase figure.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was with this, because he doesn't do it with every figure.
Right.
But yeah, it's annoying when you have no way of knowing. So with that Superman, like the evil Superman came in instead of the good Superman, and I wanted both, and it was the whole thing.
Yeah.
I ended up with both, so I was happy. But with this one, I don't want this version.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll just give up and eventually open him and add him. Like, he's not terrible.
No.
But it's just not that.
Not the one you want.
It's not that.
Yeah.
So there's that. And sorry, I know I'm going long. I want to give you time to talk about your stuff. But so speaking of Christopher Reeve Superman, going back to him for a sec, because there was no toy of this available when I was a kid, it's like kind of was left. There was like a hole in my heart that like I need that character eventually someday. So I finally have him. Now I also loved Batman 1989 when that came out.
Okay.
That was the Michael Keaton, and
that
was the first movie I saw in theaters like without my parents, and I just have memories of the whole like era of Batman when pretty much every T-shirt that you could buy in Kmart was a Batman logo. It was like a whole phenomenon when that came out. So it's all ingrained in my head, and I loved that movie. And there were toys when it came out, and I never bought any of them. And I guess it's maybe because I felt spoiled because they were already there, so I didn't ever feel like I had this hole in my heart, the same way I did with that Superman. But most of the ones from the movie were like the smaller figures. Like, anyway, McFarlane just put out a 1989 Batman figure, and so he doesn't thrill me quite the same way that Superman does.
Yeah,
but he's pretty awesome. And once I got him, I was like, yeah, I'm really glad I picked this guy up because he's cool.
Yeah, and this is the Batman I grew up with as well. Like, this is the face I remember.
Yeah. He came with a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I've got him holding his little car communicator there. But he came with batarangs, and he came with alternate hands. His cape, he comes with a couple sticks he can hold in his hand to hold his cape out like this. So it gives that bat. Yeah, that bat. I'll put a picture of it in there, but it looks pretty cool. And so now I have the kind of iconic movie versions of Batman and Superman to display together. I was telling a friend about that, and he said, now you got to get the 1970s Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
But no disrespect to Linda Carter, but I don't have that same attachment. That was before my time, so I don't associate her with these guys. But yeah, I think that makes a great little duo there.
It does. And is that a different color black paint than is normal? Like, it looks darker or something to me. Like, it just seems like it stands out more than a normal Batman figure that I see. Something looks different.
It is like a really jet black, and I don't even know if it's painted. It's molded in really dark black. And there's kind of a couple different shades of black, which is nice. Like, I think the cowl's just ever so slightly from this. And then the material on the cape is different. Like, it's not like Superman's, which is a nice kind of silky texture. This feels almost a little I don't know how we describe that, like pleathery almost. But that kind of works for leathery bat wings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very successful. I think the head sculpt, like the likeness, is really good.
Yeah, it is. But just for being all black, something about it just seems to pop.
Yeah.
Compared to normal Batman figures that I see. I don't know what it is, but it looks great.
It does look great.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of kicking myself because I enjoyed all those Batman movies.
Yeah.
The first two were obviously, in my opinion, way better than the next two.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why McFarlane didn't start with the first movie and then go from there. Because he started with the later ones. So he already did figures of the Riddler and Jim Carrey's Riddler, and I didn't buy that. And of all those later movies, the one I was most tempted by was the Uma Thurman Poison Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
I had that in my hand several months ago, and I was like, I don't really have any Batman movie figures. Do I need this? And I put it down. Now she's hard to find. All those figures are much harder to find. And I didn't know they were going to go back and do a Michael Keaton Batman. And now they've already announced they're doing Catwoman from Batman Returns, which I'll definitely have to get.
Yeah.
And now I am kind of kicking myself for not grabbing Poison Ivy.
Always the way.
Yeah. The very last thing I want to mention, this one is hot off the presses. You and me had already made plans to do this, so I knew which toys I was going to talk about today. And then GameStop called me, and they said, we got a toy that you pre-ordered, came in. My wife was just leaving the office, so I said, can you stop in and grab this for me? So I haven't opened it yet, but this is a new Supergirl figure. So,
and this is since we talked earlier.
This is just since we talked. She's brand spanking new. I haven't even really looked at her yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a big Supergirl fan.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the live action Supergirl movie?
I have not.
It's pretty bad. But I saw it when I was young, and I saw it a lot. Because back then we had like the movie network, which, the same movies were on there over and over and over again.
Always, yeah.
So, yeah, I saw Supergirl a lot when I was a kid. I think because, the Superman movies were already a little past their prime or whatever. And so now this one was... So I probably saw Supergirl more than I saw Superman when I was young. And it was bad, but it did leave an impression on me. I like Supergirl. So I have multiple versions of Supergirl in action figure form. This one is based off of this series, Woman of Tomorrow, which is the upcoming Supergirl movie is based off of this series, Woman of Tomorrow. I haven't actually read that series, but I like the look of the figure. So
yeah, it looks great. It looks just like the picture on the back of the box.
Yep.
Especially the hair.
Yeah,
I mean, it's got to be a unique sculpt, just the hair alone.
And McFarlane has done a couple other Supergirls in the past, and I never thought they really looked good.
Mm-hmm.
So all the Supergirls I have are either from like DC Direct or Mattel, which means they're smaller scale to all these McFarlane ones I've been collecting. So even though they're still nice, it's nice that I can put a modern Supergirl and display her next to my Superman, and it doesn't look weird, like she's in the proper scale. Okay, so that's my stuff. Now, when I told you, like, this is the first time you're on here as a guest star, everybody already knows now that you're an Alf guy.
Yeah.
But I said, bring them along, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So what do you got for us?
So I figured it was fitting to bring my NECA Alfs, just because this is what got me back into toy collecting, and this is directly from your guys' channel. So, like I mentioned, I had asked Chad, like, where do you guys even get these toys? Yeah. Like, I go into Walmart, I don't see a lot of, or some of these things I don't see. And he said, oh, you got to check out NECA, Big Bad Toy Store. There was a few others. And he said, oh, actually, there's a new Alf figure that just came out. And I believe it started with the San Diego Comic-Con. They were kind of just like those unique special figures. Yeah. So they first came out with, this is just like a regular Alf. And then he did come with the box that has, he came with a lot of accessories. So he's got like, there's like a sandwich that has a cat in it, and there's a bowl of popcorn and a bag of slime balls, with different hands and photos and stuff, and a transistor radio. But he did come with a lot of stuff, which made the price a little bit less shocking.
Because they're what, like $60 thereabouts?
Somewhere's around there, yeah. Yeah, it airs between 50 and 70, depending on where you get it from.
Yeah.
So so it's just like the basic Alf, and then it seems like
he's nice.
I mean, he looks just like from the show.
It had crossed my mind when this first went up for pre-order, and again, now that I know you, and as I said before, sometimes somebody else's excitement can get you excited. I feel I'd be kind of more likely to buy an Alf now, just because you've made me want to get Alf. But even before you or I were really talking or anything, I remember when this went up for pre-order, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like, I have fond memories of the Alf TV show when I was a kid. Yeah. And this looks great.
Yeah, he looks just like from the show.
Yep.
So the only thing with these figures is that it's usually the same figure over and over again, but just with different accessories. But I'm a sucker, so I keep getting them. So actually, I did buy that same figure again, so I could put him with the shirt and the sunglasses. So,
sorry.
And then I also got, so then they have 80s Alf. So again, it's the same mold, but he has a t-shirt and different colored sunglasses.
And is that a beer he's got?
I think it's just a different type of cola.
Okay.
So, and like the original one also came with a can of cola. It says Fusco on it, because Paul Fusco is the creator and voice of Alf.
All right.
So they found ways to sneak him in there.
Now, when you handed me the first Alf, I was wondering if his mouth could fully close, and it didn't look like it did. But this guy is obviously
They are stiff, yeah. So I find the Alf figures quite stiff, but his mouth does open and close.
So it is the same sculpt every time. They're not giving you new heads or anything like that?
No.
Interchangeable hands?
There's a bunch of different hands. So because he comes with a lot of different accessories, so he can hold the can of pop.
Right.
There's other things that he can hold. So, and like this 80s Alf came with this cool skateboard accessory. So this is what he's displayed on my shelf with. And then also this big 80s TV that has the animated
Alf cartoon.
Alf cartoon on it.
Is that a static image, or it almost looks like you could move it or something? It'd be cool.
No, I would. No, it's just the. Oh, look, there's even a little. You can put it on the wall. There's a little spot for a hook, but
that's cool.
It's just the same image. And then he also came with an old gaming console. I think it's like the Sega 2600 or something like that. It's supposed to be off of, but. And then there was Born to Rock Alf.
They really are taking advantage of you, I feel.
They are, yeah. And he so in the show he does make a rock video, and then he did have a rock and roll album. I don't know if he did a full album, but I know he had a song and a video on like one of the music channels.
I do remember him dressed as Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if it was from the show or from the album, but I do remember that.
Yeah, and then this one's from a San Diego Comic-Con. So this one's a different mold because he's got shoes on his feet,
Okay.
but he's got like, so he's just dressed as like a generic superhero, and then he's got a selfie stick, and it's himself in the camera phone.
That's pretty cool.
So I did like that. But yeah,
So
so
is that
like,
based on anything, or is that
no, this is just like a random, like if you went to a Comic Con, he just
right?
put on like like a cape and stuff, and away he went. Because there is one that I don't have. It's
Yeah.
the first San Diego Comic Con one, and he's got like a video camera or something with him,
Okay.
and like a different flowery shirt. So he's like just like a tourist at the convention,
Okay.
sort of thing. But yeah, so just like your reaction Godzillas, they got me. So I just,
Yeah.
and if they come out with another one with a different T-shirt, I will buy that one as well.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it's especially for the price point. I was hoping that they'd be more like $30, where I'm not getting a new mold every time, or
Yeah.
35. And then sometimes I have to get them online from the States, so it can get a little bit more
It's the same with
pricey.
these things, you know, like there's not many moving parts. Like at least Alf looks well articulated.
Yeah, he does
Like,
have a lot of moving spots.
Once you've made this mold once, you'd think you could maybe lower the price a little bit and not charge $75 every time you use it. But what are you gonna do?
We keep spending it, so they're gonna keep charging us. But like I said, at least he does come with like each Alf came with a bunch of different accessories.
Yeah.
Like there's like 7 or 8 different things that he'll come with. So I appreciate that at least. So,
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I've seen you when you post your pictures on Instagram. Like when you display him, do you lay out all those accessories around him in your display?
some of them, yeah. So like some of them I don't, but I try to, like the skateboard and the TV and stuff I have here. Those are on my display. The rock and roll one also has a microphone and stand.
Yeah.
That I didn't bring, but like those are there. But then some of them, like the bowl of popcorn and things like that. If I had, like, I would when I first got into this, I wasn't thinking I was gonna use up as much shelf space as I have with my other things. So I was half tempted to try to find like a diorama set or like a living room, so I could have him on the couch with the coffee table and his popcorn and stuff on there. But now I need the shelf space, so I think those things are going to stay in the box.
Yeah, I like the company that makes some of these creatures I have over here. Like I've recently reviewed my Pulgasari and my Yongari. They were like Korean kaiju figures.
Yep.
So it's Titanic Creations that makes those, and they are, at least they were before the tariffs. They were making a set for a diorama, and they kind of emailed all their customers and said, "We're just trying to gauge interest. Who's going to buy this?"
Yeah.
And I had to write them back and be like, "I think it's super cool that you're doing this, but I can't. Like, if you look at my shelves here, they're packed pretty tight.
Yeah.
And this diorama they're working on, it's multiple city streets with multiple buildings in different states of disrepair, and you can attach plumes of smoke, and there's bent street lights, and like very, very cool. Like if you were a kid that played with your Godzillas and you called this out and set it up every time, that would be super fun. Or if Godzilla was all I collected and I had the shelf space to set up building next to every one of them, but I collect so many figures, I don't have the luxury of a display, and that seems to be where you're getting yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at now. And like even like the last Ronin, they have like an accessories pack that they're coming out with, and I was like, I wouldn't. There was a couple things I wanted to get from that package, and I was like, oh, should I get it just for these? But it's quite expensive to just get 2 accessories that aren't even figures, but they're just fun to have. I was like, there's no room. Like I'm trying to figure out now where I got to go get an extra shelf from IKEA and figure out where I'm going to fit it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm actually in this little toy room where we do all my videos here. My door opens inward, so I have like this much clearance. I've been thinking I'm going to try and reverse my door so it opens outward, just so I can get another glass shelf and put it in that corner. So that's kind of the level of desperation I'm at now for needing shelf space. So yeah, things are tight.
Yeah, and I'm limited to, I just got the one room at home, which is also my home office. And I do have my larger TV in that room, so that takes up a lot of space. So I have to be very strategic with my next move. Or the TV may have to go somewhere else, I don't know. We'll see. See how desperate I get.
Yeah. All right, we'll tell you what. We are at a little over an hour, so we should maybe wrap this up. But I was hoping to talk to you a little bit about comic books.
Yeah.
So maybe, if you don't mind sticking around for another 15 minutes, we'll talk some comic books, and maybe I'll plop that and add it to like the next episode I do where I have a little more room.
Sure.
So we can do our little comic book section. So it'll be like you were on 2 episodes. We'll be back again. All right, so we'll sign off for this one. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I hope it lived up to expectations, being on this side of the camera and everything.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, it was a pleasure having you. I feel a little bad having you on without Chad, because we had talked about having you on sometime, but I think logistically trying to get the 3 of us in here would be tight. Mm-hmm. So we could maybe do it again all together sometimes, like kind of the Skype method.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I always struggle to do that. Like me and Chad did them virtually when his leg was broken last year. And but yeah, I always struggled with the editing. I'd get all kinds of corrupt files and stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, we can try and give that a go sometime if you want to come back.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back with another episode where we'll talk a little bit about comic books, and I'll see you then. So until next time, ciao.